Hey everyone, welcome to Showrunner Sessions with Pokerface's Tony Tost. My name is Dustin. I'm the Director of Events and Communications here at the Writers Guild Foundation. So before I introduce our moderator, I'd love to share just a quick overview of the foundation. We're the nonprofit arm of the Writers Guild of America West, and it's our mission to preserve and promote the craft of writing for the screen. So we have a bunch of events and resources and community programs that we offer to the public. You do not have to be a member of the WGA to take advantage of our resources. So we have events just like this one. We also host events in person and also live stream some of our events from the WGA headquarters on 3rd and Fairfax in Los Angeles. If you are in LA, we also have a public library that is available and open to the public by appointment only. You can go to our website to learn more about coming to our library and reading thousands of scripts from produced movies and TV shows in the Los Angeles area. While you're at our website, also make sure to check out our community programs. They are there to help kickstart emerging writers' careers. I'll drop all the links in the chat as we're going to get started. But before we do, just a quick rundown of Zoom. I'm pretty sure everyone's used Zoom by this point, but for our Q&A section, if you have a question for our panelists, please make sure to drop that in the Q&A box. You'll see that at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. If you ask the question in the chat, there's a chance that it's going to get lost. So direct all those questions to the Q&A box. Closed captioning is also available, so if you need to, you can hit the show captions button at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar as well. And that is about enough out of me. So without further ado, I'd like to hand things over to our moderator. Please welcome, he's a TV critic for Rolling Stone, Alan Sepinwall. Take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here to talk about a show I love dearly, Poker Face on Peacock. We're here with showrunner Tony Tost. Hi, Tony.
Hey, Alan, how's it going?
Good, good. All right. So, for anyone who's joining us who has not watched Poker Face already, first of all, you should watch Poker Face. It's one of the most entertaining shows on TV right now. But just to help make the conversation make sense to you, I'll break it down as quick as I can. It's a classic, it's a modern spin on the classic Case of the Week mystery series created by Ryan Johnson, starring Natasha Lyonne as Charlie Cale, a woman with an almost supernatural ability to tell when someone is lying, but not necessarily why or what about. As she travels from town to town in her vintage Plymouth Barracuda, always trying to stay a step ahead of the various mobsters trying to kill her, she keeps finding herself having to solve the murders that happen wherever she goes. The season two finale just was released today, so for the benefit of anyone who has not watched it yet, we're going to start off in more general territory. Then Tony and I are going to talk some specifics about the season, and at the very end, before the audience Q&A, we will talk about the finale. I will give you plenty of spoiler warnings ahead of time in case you want to duck out and come back later or watch it on YouTube after you have seen what happens in the finale. But Tony, let's start with this. You did not watch the first, you did not work on the first season of the show. Sorry. When you watched it, what did you think of it?
Well, I loved it. And I was kind of honestly pissed off because I was already kind of developing on my own. Like I'd had, I think, a similar itch for the old school case of the week character driven show. I was kind of scratching at my, if Poker Face is a modern spin on Columbo, I was kind of going more of a Rockford Files type thing
Love
of that.
Rock.
Yeah, me too. And so and I was kind of playing around, it was like the beginning kind of sticking, and then I saw the announcement and I was like, well, Ryan Johnson, Natasha Lyonne, and they're doing Columbo. I'm just like, oh man, like fucking they beat me to it. That's so perfect. And so then I finally got around to watch it. I'm like, oh, it's even better than I thought it would be, which was great as a viewer. And then yeah, so I was just an unabashed fan. And then yeah, and then they needed a showrunner for season two, and so I kind of threw my hat in the ring.
All right, so let's talk about that. You come in, you get the job for season two. What were the discussions like between you, Ryan, Natasha, and everybody else about sort of what everyone wanted season two to be?
Yeah, I mean, so there's multiple candidates in there, and so you're kind of I mean, my big pitch was like, I don't think there's anything to course correct. There's not something I want to change. I just want to do more of what you guys did in season 1, and then, you know, just keep pushing that format, that template, that character, see what other worlds, how we, you know, like there's something. I have this poetry background, and so there's something to me like that how catch 'em, that template that Ryan and team developed in season 1. It's almost, there's a sonnet type thing in there where you can keep returning to the same kind of ingredients, but you can mix and match and manipulate it in different ways. And so yeah, I was largely talking about that of just, and then, you know, I pitched, you know, different cinematic, you know, I was like, well, you know, like maybe there's an idea of where we bring in a CB radio buddy, which ended up being Good Buddy, just because like you know, my love of trucker movies from the 70s. And so there was a lot of me just kind of being excited about season 1. And I think part of the reason I'm thinking that I could tell Ryan really got excited in particular when I was talking about wanting to protect the episodic element and not to like develop too much backstory, not too much mythology, not too much serialization. And so that was a lot of the conversation actually of like protecting that, because there's so much almost gravity towards making a season of TV a 10-hour movie or whatever the normal kind of talking points are. And like there's almost like an unreflective default to that's what TV should be. And part of my pitch was like, no, I love that there's this other thing that TV does really, really well that, you know, it's kind of gotten away from, and you know, and that you can do a high quality version of. So that was, you know, so it wasn't anything too concrete about like this plot turn or this twist or these serialized elements. Those kind of came in the room. It was more like, these are the things I love about the show, and these are the things I want to protect. I also wanted to protect the just the flyover blue collar strange pocket of America element of the show, and that it's not, you know, aspirational, it's not, you know, lifestyle porn in that type of way. It's a little bit more matter of, and but it's also not exploring like you know, like it's about life in America, but it's not self-important about it. It just kind of takes matter of fact. Sometimes people work you know, customer service jobs or labor jobs. Like that's just part of life, and you can just tell stories there.
Yeah, and there's a period in the season where Charlie is living in an apartment in New York, and it's not a nice apartment. It's
Yeah,
very small and cramped, you know.
yeah.
There's a water stain on the ceiling. I assume that was an intentional choice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when we were scouting locations, you know, you know, we kind of narrowed down, and just to double check, I'd send pictures to Ryan and to Natasha, just like, yeah, I think you know, because you don't want, it's like finding that middle ground where you're not doing, yeah, you're not doing aspirational, but you're also not doing like, you know, like, oh, look at how terrible, you know, it's just a little bit more just working class, just kind of just working people type of a, just in a like an apartment, you know, like that. And so yeah, and kind of lean, like not overdoing it, not having cockroaches going around and stuff like that, but just like, yeah, it's, the building's been there for a while, and yeah, and it's more kind of, yeah, blue collar, I guess would be the term of it. So yeah, that's kind of a through line to the aesthetics of the show. I feel that I kind of drew me to it, and that I wanted to kind of protect.
All right, you mentioned the word "how catch 'em" before, which is, you know, an old school TV word referring to stuff like Columbo, where it
Yeah.
begins with, you know, you see the murder happen, and then you introduce the detective who's going to figure out how to get the person that you already know who did it. What is the challenge for you? The first 10, 15 minutes of your average episode take place without Natasha on screen. We're introduced to multiple new characters, one of whom is going to kill another one and try to construct a perfect alibi before we get back to our one main regular character. What is that like for you, that process of working with everyone to come up with those
Yeah.
openings?
Well, you know, in a weird, almost probably perverse way, that first act, like we kind of break it into 4 acts in the room. That first act before Charlie comes in is often the easiest one to break. Like, even though you're introducing a whole new world, and even though you're, you know, whole new characters and whole new dynamics, like you're in essence at every time you're you know what you're doing. You're telling a story, and you're telling the story of why one person would want to kill another person, how they do it, and how they try to cover it up. So in a way, you know, you're just telling a short story there. And a lot, and oftentimes and I guess maybe part of the reason why, at least in the in the breaking version of it, when we're just kind of spitballing in the room, um, one reason it might be easier because like often when we're just thinking about episode ideas, we very much or we start with subcultures, worlds, and characters who would want to kill each other or a murder. So like that's often the starting point. So like the seeds are there. And then we start thinking about, well, what's Charlie doing there? And then what's her relationship to everyone? And so that mini movie element of that first act, sometimes it's just so freeing because it could be anything, and there's something that was already there that got the room excited and primarily got Ryan excited, because we pitch out ideas to Ryan, and Ryan will be like, yeah, no, I think the minor league baseball thing, like, you guys do that. So okay, we'll go in there. We know that there's something there that's promising. So that's actually kind of oddly the one of the easier parts to come up with initially.
The fun of those is that when we then come back from the break and we rewind to how Charlie gets involved, Charlie is there the whole time as the opening act. We're just not seeing her. She's off camera. She's interacting with these people in other ways. When you're coming up with that opening act, do you already have Charlie's role in that part in mind, or do you figure that out after you've worked out the killer and the victim story?
I'd say it's about half and half, I think. Yeah. So sometimes we don't know it. And then sometimes, because sometimes the episode idea will come, we will like early on the first half in the writer's room, maybe once a week or once every other week, everybody comes in and pitches ideas. So like writers pitch, support staff can pitch if they have an idea. Like it's kind of open game. Ryan's there, I'm there as his support, taking in pitches. And sometimes part of a writer's pitch will be Charlie's role in this world. Other times it's not. And so it can kind of come either way. And then, you know, the default is like, well, oh, Charlie's got a job there. And I think, Ryan has a little bit of an allergy to like doing the same moves over and over again. So he'll often push, you know, the minor league baseball episode. It doesn't start with Charlie as a ball girl. It starts her working next door to the stadium and she gets hit in the head, and that pulls her in. And big part of that is just simply like, let's just find new ways to get her into an episode that are unexpected so that it doesn't get too rote.
There's a couple of episodes this season that are off format in a way. The third episode, for instance, begins with Charlie already on camera dealing with something that's happened at the end of the previous episode. The finale is somewhat similar to that. And when I've talked to Ryan about it, he said the goal is always to still make it feel like an episode of Poker Face in some way. So, for instance, with that third episode where she's in the car with Beatrix Haas holding the gun to her, how do you then make that feel like the same show as all the others?
Yeah, I mean that's part of the struggle, and part of that is just it's simply because we ended episode 2 on a minor cliffhanger, Beatrix Haas putting the gun on the head, and so yeah, there was discussion like, well, do we just pick it right back up, which is what we ended up doing, or do we go to the traditional thing where, well, we don't come to that until Act 2 when we introduce Charlie. But since it was, there was this serialized immediate pickup, we even though we don't see Charlie, there is that element of there's a murder or a seeming murder, or in this one, there's a murder, then a seeming murder, then an actual murder on, that we end the episode on. I mean, the act on, and that we pick up, and that Charlie's going to have to unravel, but that order is different, and so then it's like in the second act that's the one where we don't have Charlie, and like you said, and so I think hopefully it's still there's enough of the pleasures of a Poker Face episode, even if it doesn't
Yeah.
the exact same pattern, that it still feels like a Poker Face episode, that it's not purely a character or emotion relationship driven, but that there is still at the heart of it, Charlie's got to uncover what nobody else can uncover in terms of the murder.
A big part of mystery as a genre is people are telling lies, and your hero has to figure out who is lying. You have a character, she always knows when people are lying. So, what are the challenges in that regard to writing this series?
Yeah, I mean, it is a real challenge. And it's something that we struggle with in the room, because you don't want to keep just, again, going to that same well. But sometimes you can't help it. Like, she's gonna call, like, people are gonna lie because they have reasons to lie, because especially if they killed somebody. Um, but the way I look at it is like, her lie detector and that element of lying is this constant, and part of our goal or our challenge is to find new variations, new fresh ways, new ways to turn that thing of, like we didn't end up using it, but there was one episode where we were talking about, there's a character that Charlie trusts. We established that. And then Charlie looks through a window and she can tell that the person's lying, but she doesn't know what they're saying. She doesn't know the content, but she knows. And we didn't end up using it, but that was, I just use that as an example, as a way of like, okay, like, there is this lie detector. It offers us, there's a certain amount of variations uh, latent to that aspect of her character. How can we manipulate that? And so everything from her nemesis to meeting someone who doesn't seem to lie, to, in the 201, when Cynthia Erivo, when confronted, tells a lie, but tells it in such a way that it's like almost this performance art thing, and Charlie's like, no, weirdly that is true, but it's really pretentious, so again, like, all of those things are kind of latent within this idea of like, she can read people, so that way you're not just, you know hitting the exact same beat all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like there's some episodes where her gift barely factors in at all.
Yeah.
And then there's some episodes where the bad guy knows what she can do and thus sort of figures out ways to talk around it. I mean, Cynthia Erivo's kind of doing that in the premiere.
Yeah.
I mean, how much do you and the other writers talk about like finding different ways to approach the gift from week to week?
Constantly, because we're always doing that, and it's really, and a lot of that comes from Ryan. As you know, if you follow his work, you know that he's really like, if there's one thing Ryan really wanted us not to do, is not repeat ourselves, and not repeat season one, not repeat, and find new unexpected wrinkles. So yeah, we're always trying, and sometimes we can't find a new way to it, and we go back to the tried and true. But that is definitely a goal that we always have. Or there's a couple of times where somebody says the same thing early in the episode and it's true, and then they say the same thing later and it's false. It's bullshit. And so Charlie knows something has changed in between. So like, that's one variant on it. And so yeah, just trying to give different slants or angles to that element.
I was speaking to one of the guest stars from this season, and they said the way the show is cast is basically Natasha looks through her phone, calls up someone in her contacts, and says, "Hey, can you come in next week?" It can't be that simple, can it? I imagine there's more to it.
No, I mean, that's an element of it. It's pure chaos. It's absolutely pure chaos. Because every 10 days other than Natasha, we're recasting the entire show. So it's like doing, up until these last couple episodes where there's, some recurring guest stars, it's like doing 12 pilots. It's like doing 12 mini movies. Like, you have to recast the entire show. And so there's like a text chain. There's like multiple text changes, which is part of the chaos. So there's one with like me, Ryan, and Natasha, where we're texting ideas and we're doing things, and then there's another one where like it's like the three of us and Mary Vernew, who's our casting director. And then there's other side ones that will pull in other EPs, and then I'm sure I know that there's one just Ryan and Natasha talking about their mutual friends, and then Natasha will just meet people, will text people, will, or go have dinner with some cool person who's just like, I want to be on Pokerface, and so like, all of these channels of communication, and then we're actually getting auditions also, and so all of these channels of possible paths towards casting the next episode are going on concurrently, and then somehow through that chaos we end up landing over and over again with people. As soon as they're cast and as soon as they're on set, you're just like, of course it's going to be Katie Holmes, of course it's going to be Simon Rex, and that kind of thing. There's something, whether it's luck or whether it's just Ryan and Natasha having lots of cool friends, or people really liking season 1 or wanting to work with Natasha, we end up landing with to all these kind of, fantastic guest stars. But the process of getting there is just utter chaos. Yeah.
But I wonder, like, when you guys are breaking episodes and you're in the room or you're just talking to each other on the text chains, are you writing towards at least a type of actor? Like, that, like, the John Mulaney character you're going to want to have played by a comedian, or it's just John and Natasha are friends and ultimately he seemed like a good fit for the part?
So Wyatt Kane, who wrote that episode 203, Whack-A-Mole, when he pitched it to the room, to Ryan and the rest of us, he's just, an FBI agent, parentheses, John Mulaney type,
And you got the type.
And so, yeah, and exactly. And like, Wyatt's a pretty smart guy. He knows that Natasha and Mulaney are pals, and he knows that's probably more likely for us to get than, like, say, I don't know, name what, I don't know, Laurence Olivier, who's dead, so that, there's a higher chance of
Slightly
probability,
more of a chance.
yeah, or Walter Matthau, but yeah, so sometimes it's that, and other times it's a little bit more like the character is based on somebody we knew, or is based on a prototype, or somebody from, or it's just a grounding, like the Gator Joe episode, Taste of Human Blood, like that character's named Fran, because part of it, like in the, again, that's Wyatt Kane's episode, he's just like, let's call her Fran because she's a very capable cop, like the one Frances Dorman plays in Fargo. And so that was the grounding of it. And so then, in talking about possibilities, then we land on Gabby Hoffman. And so, like, so it's lots of different angles, or also sometimes, I know that Justin Theroux, in talking to Natasha before season 2, was just like, hey, if there's a guest part for me, I'd love to do it. And so we knew that he was game and wanted to potentially do a guest part. And so when we were thinking about an assassin character, immediately Justin's name was on the tip of our tongues.
You mentioned the Gator Joe episode, and that's kind of fun. There's a few episodes this season where Charlie solving a murder is almost besides the point. She just wants to save the alligator in that one. In the one at the private school, she just wants to make the little boy feel better and know that he did not actually kill the gerbil. Just talk to me a little bit about coming up with these change of pace episodes this season.
Yeah, I mean, they're each individual. So the interesting thing is, at the start of the season of the writers' room, Ryan, to my, directly to me before the writers came in, and to the writers, gave very little mandate, like very little, like, this is what season 2 should do. His direction to me and to the writers' room is, don't worry about season 2 overall storyline. Don't just come up with standalone mysteries and episodes that we haven't seen before that are interesting. And actually, the Gator Joe episode was the first episode we broke as a writer's room, even though it's the 4th in the season. And we actually, like, as a room, came up with something more grounded and a little darker and grittier. And Ryan's just like, yeah, I'm not feeling it. Why don't you set it in Florida, make it a Florida man thing, and have a cop being eaten by an alligator? That's the starting point. And part of me is like, what the fuck? But it's like, okay, I mean, like, he's Ryan Johnson for a reason. Let's go with it. And then, and then we all kind of, and then we found, like, well, in Act 3, we after we've had Charlie, like, Act 1, the murder takes place. Act 2, we see what Charlie's doing there, and we catch up with the murder. Act 3, we need to get her invested, because she's not a cop, she's not a detective, and get her on the path to solving it. And that step of getting Charlie invested is very important to Ryan. And so we're always trying to come up, with something new or something different. And so this idea of, like, no, actually, it's not the victim this time, it's actually this, the fall gator for it, And so then, and then that's like, okay, that makes sense. We hadn't seen that before. It's a little different. It's, and so then everything from her connecting the vision with the gator and stuff was all in the service of, like, okay, well, how do we get Charlie to give a shit about this alligator that's been accused of murder? and so it kind of goes, so it's very kind of just piece by piece, episode by episode ways of doing it, and kind of like in the same way, like, with the elementary school, which is one of my very, very favorites of the season. Like, she's not going to befriend the gerbil necessarily. I guess she could, but we already did that with the gator thing. And so like Annette is like, okay, well then, like, she's invested in this kid and this kid's psychology, and she's friends with the dad, and she wants to kind of like, no one else is standing up for this kid. Like, she's gonna do it, And so, and then all of a sudden, an episode that's a little bit outlandish has, pretty genuine emotional stakes or or some grounding to it, and then it makes sense to us, and then we can kind of figure it out. So it's less, I mean, there is part of us that's always trying to find a different motivation or different variance, but also there's sometimes it's just like, what's an available way for us as writers to get emotionally invested in this, and to get Charlie invested, and then hopefully that carries over to the viewer as well.
Well, it's interesting because I mean the show is always comedic, and Natasha's just one of our funniest human beings. It does feel like the Gator Joe episode, the stuff in the premiere about Kid Cop Nights, in the minor league baseball episode, Charlie hallucinating BJ Novak. It feels like you guys gave yourselves maybe a little bit more license to be silly this year than what was happening in season one before you were on. Was
Yeah.
that a conscious thing, or it just sort of kept happening?
It was, to be honest, it was a Ryan thing.
Yeah.
Like, it was, I think, and I a little bit, I think this is my suspicion, because
Yeah.
like, Ryan, while we were breaking this season of Pokerface, he was in the guts of the script, and then prep, and then eventually filming of the new Knives Out movie, which is fantastic, by the way. It's good. I can't wait for people to see it. But it's a heavier story in a lot of ways, and heavy thematics in it. And I kind of think Pokerface was episodes was a relief for Ryan from that world he was in, like, trying to figure out this script. So it is kind of like just this, artist's impulse that the rest of us were very happy to follow. Like, we all like, like, there's, that Gator Joe episode that animated, and it could be like a Simpsons or a post Simpsons type of thing. Like, there's some goofiness in there, but the kind of weird, the impetus of that is, a lot of that is Ryan himself, of like the LSD trip. That was a Ryan, he's like, why don't we have him do this? Like, okay, let's figure out the best way of doing that trip. And it's probably my favorite part of that episode. So yeah, there's very much a he's like this, he comes in several times a week and is like, jumps in. We've been cooking one thing, and he'll, throw a few things out, put a couple oddball things in, and we reconstitute it, put it together again. And then eventually it comes into something where it, at least to me, kind of feels like, oh yeah, this is probably what it wanted to be all along. It kind of took maybe Ryan kind of come in almost an impish kind of like, let's blow up half this episode and throw in some oddball things in it. And so that, yeah, that was kind of, but there was no kind of discussion like, let's really kind of expand the tonal range, or let's really explore different types of humor. It kind of came out organically, not unconsciously, but not deliberately, not strategically. It kind of just came out of the process, really, with Ryan's instigation.
You said Ryan wanted you to focus on episodic things, and there's obviously lots of great episodic stuff here. Structurally, though, the one of the driving factors of the first season is Charlie is on the run from the mob, and that continues at the start of this season, and then at the end of the third episode, Charlie helps out Beatrix Hasp, and in exchange, Beatrix calls off the hit on her, and suddenly Charlie is not a fugitive anymore. She's still traveling the country, but it's by choice. She can go to the cops, she can get a smartphone, she can do all of these things that she couldn't do in the first season. Uh, Two separate questions. First of all, why did you guys decide, like, let's table that?
Yeah. I mean, again, like, not to like, I am a participant in the thing, but my assumption was that we were going to do a full Beatrix Haas, you know, kind of like, the season one did so well. And then I was kind of talking about with Ryan before we were even bringing it to the whole room. And he's just like, Tony, like we did that in season one. I don't want to do the exact same thing. Like, I kind of just like, as a viewer and also as just the creator of the show, he's just like, I kind of just would want to like wrap it up surprisingly early. And then that just frees, like, the heart of the show is Charlie going from town to town and solving a murder. Like that's the heart of the show. And I, yeah, I wasn't involved in season one, but I almost suspect that there was a little bit of, to justify what was the intent all along. That was part of the instigation of having the mob boss Ron Perlman and Benjamin Bratt after Charlie. It worked wonderfully in it, but I think also there's probably part of Ryan that felt like, okay, we've kind of shown that the show works. We maybe don't need to rely on the exact same device. And then we were kind of discussing, well, then, like, why is she on the road continually? And kind of naturally the next step is then, well, instead of being on the run, she's kind of on the road. Is a kind of an existential element where she's trying to find her place in the world now that she's on the road of her own accord. And so that was kind of fun to think about. We handle it not too heavily, and we don't get too deep into it because it's not that kind of show, but it would give us kind of a through line for individual episodes, or a frame, or a way to approach the minor league baseball. It's more about the community than the game itself in that episode. So like, and that kind of came out naturally from just like, Charlie longing for something, getting a taste of it, and the same thing with kids or with romance. And then something happens where, well, no, she's got to get on the road again, and so that kind of came across organically. But the real answer is that, like, Ryan just is like, no, it kind of sounds boring to kind of do the same thing again. Let's do something else.
Okay, so limitations can be a writer's best friend or a worst enemy because they can force you to be creative, but also they can make you bang your head against a wall. In the first season, which you weren't on, and then the first couple of episodes of this year, Charlie's a fugitive. Like I said, she cannot go to the cops. She cannot like look things up on a phone. She cannot stay in one place for very long. She has to be very creative in the ways that she seeks justice. Then this ends, Beatrix calls off the hit, and you've got a bunch of episodes in a row where Charlie can kind of do whatever she wants, and she does have a phone and she has all of these things. How did that like change the writing of the show for you, and did it make things easier, or did it make things any more difficult in some ways?
The honest answer is that I don't think it changed too much. I think it was because because we broke those episodes, um you know the episodes where this Beatrix Hast thing ties up. Those were the episodes we broke first. And we always thought, well, we'll go back and we'll figure out, if we have to put in, a character showing up or something like that, we'll retcon that in as we figure out the serialized elements. But then I think that was part of it. It's like, okay, we have these individual episodes that we all like. And then we started, talking about, well, okay, like, we got to do something with the hasp thing. And so then we broke those, 1, 2, and 3, especially 1 and 3 later, in the process, that we kind of took care of that. And then, yeah, so it was actually, you know it was not at the forefront of our mind, actually.
Yeah. That makes sense. All right. So there's the premiere with Cynthia Erivo. She's playing a character who was a child star on a cheesy procedural
Yeah.
cop show, Kid Cop Nights. And there's ways in which the episode almost feels like a commentary on that because it's got identical quintuplets. You've got a heist movie episode this season. You've got a con artist movie episode this season. When, like, I mean, do things like that begin as someone saying, let's do a heist episode, or it's more someone has an idea for what the crime is, and then at a certain point it occurs to you guys, oh, we can structure this way?
Yeah, I mean, again, like, probably a boring answer, but it can come in multiple ways. So, like, the heist episode, which ended up being kind of a mixed love letter to heist movies and rom-coms, like, that started with that episode's writer Taufik Khaled, to just when we were going around pitching ideas, he's just like, maybe like a big box store would be interesting, because, like, he'd noticed, like a lot of us notice, is that, like, the physical media section has like dwindled or disappeared in these big box stores, And it's just like, so his idea was like, what if there's like someone who's like the local Tarantino, like lord of the is the person you go to get movie recommendations, but because that has disappeared, now they've they don't have a kingdom anymore, and they're shitty at their job, and they get fired, but they know every heist movie ever, and so they're going to utilize that to steal this to rob the store. And so then that was the seed of it. And so then we kind of get into it. It's like, okay, well then naturally you want to do homage to different heist movies because that's in and of this character's DNA. And then when it got to us, talking about Charlie's story, just thought, well, like, wouldn't it would be interesting if this is the romance one, and it's like, Kendall's in a heist movie, Charlie's in a rom-com, and they cross paths. And so again, like it started with a seed and a world that had inherent possibilities to it, and then in the process of breaking it and discussing it, we kind of chose a lane, and so that was how that evolved.
All right, before we get to the Q&A in about 8-9 minutes, we need to talk about the finale because a lot of stuff happens there. So folks, if you've not seen it, we're going to spoil stuff. You can come back at 5:45. Tony, I think it's safe for you to hear these questions.
Okay, good. Because I know there's some big twists, but yeah.
All right. So the last few episodes, while Charlie is living in New York, she makes a friend, Alex, played by Patty Harrison, who helps her out on a case or two. And Alex is sort of congenitally honest. She cannot lie, and that's one of the reasons Charlie likes her. Then in the finale, we find out that Alex is in fact the iguana, the world's greatest assassin, and also the only person capable of lying to Charlie Cale. I'm curious, first of all, did the idea come from let's give Charlie a nemesis, and then you decided to make them be friends first, or it was let's give Charlie a buddy, and then it occurred to someone, oh, what if she's really like the bad guy?
If I can remember correct, so like the Alex character is the brainchild of wonderful writer in our room, Laura Dealey, who also wrote the premiere, who pitched almost in full form the Cynthia Revo episode. She, when on one of these pitching sessions, she's like, I have a character idea, and again, it's like, inherent to the lying thing, like, Charlie needs, in this genre, there's often the grand nemesis in it, and so it should be built around the lie, and so that was the idea. And then and almost the terms we were talking about was just like, well, wouldn't it be interesting if Charlie's Moriarty was introduced to her and to the audience, and we think it's her Watson, like, again, another prototype. And so it was kind of baked in there from the get-go, or for that initial discussion, like did it exactly come from Laura's mouth, the like, it's a Watson that's revealed to be Marty? Probably, because like Laura is brilliant. Or it could have came out of that first discussion where she threw it out, Ryan and the rest of us all started discussing it, and we found like, oh, that gets us the most excited. So it was baked in pretty early from the get-go.
All right, so you've got to cast someone who can be both convincing as Watson and as Moriarty. Why Patty Harrison?
Patty Harrison's amazing. And we're all, and I think the thing that we knew that was key to Laura and Ryan and myself and Wyatt and all the other writers was like, what would, since it's going to be a sidekick, what would we think, who would Charlie want to adopt in? Like, there, Charlie looks out for underdogs, a little bit outcast, so it should be somebody who's a little bit of an odd duck. Should be like, and Charlie has an estranged relationship with her sister, which you just touch upon lightly in season 1. So the idea of like, I think Charlie would be couldn't help but want to befriend and help take care of a kind of a seemingly gullible, overly earnest, sincere kid's sister. And so then, so we talked about different actresses and different people, and the Patty thing seemed, have real possibility and not be too obvious. And we knew that she's very funny, and we were all just kind of fans of her, and it's just one of those things, just on a gut, it just felt right, and so that's kind of how we landed on it.
So as a result of everything that the iguana does in the finale, Charlie is a fugitive again, but this time she's on the run from the law instead of from the mob.
Yeah.
How was that decision made?
That was actually, I mean, that that was always in the air. Like that was always, once we did start talking about a serialized shape, however light to the season, the idea of Charlie ending season 2 being on the run from the FBI was kind of always in the air. I think from Ryan, but I think it all felt right with because of the Luca relationship. Like that seems like to something to, you know, it could be inherent to that relationship, like where this person who by the end of season 2, like that, like Luca's kind of her only friend in the world, and now they're forced in this relationship where he's he's probably gonna have to chase after her, or they're gonna have to, you know. And so that yeah, it always been kind of hanging, and but it wasn't until, you know, fully breaking the finale that's what it was, that's what it landed on. But it was kind of, it was kind of always hovering there.
All right, so not only is she a fugitive, but also the only other like ongoing character on the show, the Barracuda, dies. The Barracuda goes off a cliff, and now Charlie is hitchhiking. I know, there's no season 3 order yet. You're not working on it, but when you guys were breaking the finale, did you talk at all about like, well, what is the show now if she doesn't have this car, if she's sort of on the run from the law instead of the mob? Like, how much have you thought through that kind of thing?
We haven't. It's very much like it's like we just finished a marathon, and I, we've all been spending a few months catching our breath. And so like maybe after, you know, we finish dry heaving and catching our breath from this, you know, sprint we've been on for the last 15 months, maybe then we'll talk about. But it was just, yeah, it just, it felt like a cool, interesting moment. You know, there's the Thelma and Louise of it all. Like there, yeah, like in a way, the Barracuda was collateral damage. It wasn't like, oh, we got to get rid of this fucking car. Like the car's awesome. You know, I mean, a little bit of a pain in the ass, you know, physically on set. We've got 2 of them, and one's always breaking down, and you know, anyways, but yeah, so but we haven't had those discussions. It's just like, let's just get to the end of season 2, which I think really was kind of like, you know, end of season 1 was like, let's just, you know, a nice ending point for season 1, and then you know, I'll, you know, we get another season, let's figure out how to pick up that baton. You know, I think it's going to be the same thing. Like, is Charlie going to have a Prius now? I don't know, you know, like it's um yeah,
Certainly easier for you to maintain if it's a Prius.
100%. Yeah.
All right, we're going to go to audience Q&A in a second, but I want to ask one more thing, getting back to the idea of guest casting. When you did the con artist episode, and it opens with the long scene of John Cho and Melanie Linsky, and he seems to be running a con on her, but it's played in such a way that you're not 100% sure if she's not running a con on him and trying to play the innocent victim. And so, like, I'm spending the first few minutes of the episode saying, wait, who's going to kill who here? I'm wondering if, like, there is something, if certain actors you feel are better as a poker face villain, or poker face killer or poker face victim, or it really just depends on like what the needs of a role are.
Yeah, I think it really kind of, I mean, I would, yeah, I think the perfect poker face guest star is someone you could totally buy for either role. I think, you
Yeah.
know, that's kind of the ideal. And that you know, you'd be like you know, like also the one between Alia and Aquafina. Like, you know, at a certain point you probably think Aquafina is going to kill Alia instead of the other way around. And maybe also the same thing with John Ritter and Method Man. But yeah, I mean, but the you know, in particular, I mean, that was something Mimi Cave was a wonderful director who directed that the sleazy Georgian with John Cho, Melanie Linsky. I mean, that was something very that she saw in the script, and that she very purposefully, you know, and she talked with me and Ryan and Natasha about it, just like, I kind of want to play it this way. I'm just like, yeah, that sounds great, play it like that, you know. And for that exact same feeling where you want to be kind of hanging on, like, wait, is she conning him too, or what exactly is going on?
By the way, just before we get to the audience Q&A, I gotta ask, in 2 out of 3 consecutive episodes, you kill off Melanie Linsky and Jason Ritter, who are married. Is this a coincidence? Was it a package deal?
It was like I'll do poker face if you kill my spouse. No, I mean, we filmed those pretty out of order. We actually yeah, so no, it was just like, oh, these are great actors who are in the Natasha Ryan Clea Duvall friend circle. And so I think that was that, as opposed to trying to target a particular marriage and try to, put them both under. Yeah.
And try to eventually destroy the marriage. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
I got it. Okay. So let's do some audience questions. We're going to start off. This is from Amy, who writes, at Cal State Northridge, we completed a whole semester on Pokerface. I would love to take that class, and debated whether Charlie's comment about hating beaches is just a personality quirk or if it's deeper, like she instinctively avoids open, calm places because they go against her fugitive survival instincts. Was that intentional, or are we reading way too much into it?
That's a season 1 element, because and that the show, frankly, that we completely contradict by having Charlie enjoying a day on the beach in episode 202. So I would think that was probably like it's interesting because I wasn't there on season 1, but there is a certain amount, especially when it comes to Charlie dialogue, where you kind of you sketch half the dance, and Natasha comes in and will throw, she's coming up with new dialogue all the time and new things, and that are, and stuff, and then they land in the edit because they seem to work, and then it becomes part of the lore and part of the canon. I can't speak for the season 1 team, but my suspicion is that it was more of a spur of a moment remark than a baked in symbol of her inner domain.
Okay, Rachel wants to know, with new characters and a new cast for each episode, how often do you have to rewrite a character to fit the actor once the role is cast?
Awesome question. Sometimes not at all. Sometimes, yeah, I mean, sometimes there's physical characteristics, sometimes there's gender elements, sometimes it's written for one ethnicity or one age, and then we cast someone else and we change it. Sometimes it's simply because we were so lucky to have so many really cool people want to be in the show. We're just like, oh, we just cast a comedic heavyweight to come in and say 6 lines, and none of them are funny, you know? And so we would often, it would be send it to Wyatt Kane, who's our kind of in-house, like his sense of humor is the closest to Ryan's, and he's just hands down the funniest person in the writer's room. We're just like, Wyatt, okay, we just cast someone really good for this. Can you take 12 hours and do a pass through so that we justify casting this person? And so then he'll do, and he'll some of my favorite lines in season 2 came from Wyatt doing exactly that. And so that'll happen sometimes. So but then other times you don't have to change anything at all.
Okay, all right. This one is from Molly. She wants to know, did all the writers in your room already have experience working on a mystery or procedural? It seems so fun, but also intimidating if you've never done it before.
Yeah, not everyone did. Wyatt Kane was in season 1. Natasha and Alice Zhu co-wrote an episode in season 1 and also season 2. I had worked on a show called Longmire, which was kind of a cowboy mystery show that I very much enjoyed. And other writers had, but then other writers had not had, Taufik worked on Atlanta and Barry. Amazing shows, but not mystery of the week shows. But so yeah, you kind of cast the writer's room. To me, it's like casting a show. You're trying to bring a whole array of complementary but different skill sets, and some of that is like, oh, need to have some mystery people in there, but we're also very lucky to have Ryan does we're not only pitching out to Ryan a couple of times a week and he's adjusting and changing, but Ryan also does a pass on every script. And so so he's always, we have almost this luxury. We have this Ryan Johnson, modern master of the mystery genre as our backstop, as our final run through before it goes into production. And so there's a certain element where, like, our job is, come up with good mystery and everything like that, but also maybe more important, come up with good characters, good scenes, some emotional things, do our best on the mystery thing, and then Ryan will then push it a little bit further along those lines. But yeah, not everyone did. And then there was some, our writer's room assistant, Rafi Cantor, his episode, he wrote the gym one with Method Man. That was his first episode of TV. That was his first episode. Now he's a staff on Wednesday on Netflix. So he hadn't written anything for TV before. He'd only worked support staff. He was ready to make that jump. So yeah, so it's not, you don't have to, but we did have several people in there with that experience to lean on.
All right, well, that actually sets us up for a question from Jen, who asks, what advice would you give to a writer trying to break in now who didn't get their start in their 20s or 30s?
I mean, that could be like a 2-hour incoherent response. I mean, unfortunately, I think it's a hard time to break in right now. It is, though. Like, here's what I did. Like, I had one friend. I wasn't gonna do this. I was a poet and academic. I didn't have any training in screenwriting. I loved it. I always wanted to do it. I just figured I don't have the connections. I have no way of doing it. Then one friend from my MFA program broke in to do TV. And I was like, well, hell, if he can do it, I can do it. And I wrote a script, gave it to him. He gave it to his reps. That's how I broke in. I got really lucky. But one thing I accidentally did, which I think really worked for me, is that my script that I used to break in really reflected the uniqueness of my biography. Like I grew up kind of small town, trailer park background. My biological father spent most of his life in prison, I was told. I didn't know him. And then I somehow went off and became a poet and went and got a PhD. And so I had this weird for Hollywood background. And then the script of mine had some elements of autobiography, but it was like a modern day Western. I think there was a combination of this script that I think worked pretty well and this unique biography, so that when I actually, like, if somebody responded to the script or to get people's attention, my reps could lead with, like, here's somebody who has a story you haven't seen yet. He has this background, went and did this. Now he's got a story to tell from the middle of America. Here it is, like a modern, macho crime story with some poetic lyricism. Why don't you check it out? And people were interested in that. And I think, I'm not saying, like, copy my life story or anything, but, like, I think if there's something unique to you, as opposed to trying to kind of replicate what the well-connected people are doing, like kind of embrace being an outlier in a way. I don't know, like when I was going through scripts and people for the Pokerface writers room, I was largely like looking for people with interesting backgrounds because I wanted interesting discussions in there. So, like, I didn't, like, I actually asked my cohorts, like, can we, on this round of applicants, can we, like, just have the Ivy League people, like, just like maybe not this round, like maybe we get some other people in here, because I just wanted nothing against Ivy Leaguers, but, like, we already had a few of those. Like, I wanted some variety of background. But what appealed to me is, like, if they had a script set in a world that they knew very well, and had entertaining scenes. So yeah, I mean, this is, like, again, like I was saying, like, I tell a 2-hour incoherent response, but I think there's something about making yourself memorable, unique, and providing some real distinct pleasures in your script. There might be some kind of alchemy there that will help you stand apart from, what otherwise might be a whole bunch of interchangeable people writing kind of similar scripts with similar backgrounds, maybe.
All right, so that answer then inspired another question from Sarah, who wants to know, how did you train yourself to write television given your background as a poet? They seem so different.
Yeah. Well, I watch a lot of movies. That helps. And I sincerely love the mediums of film and TV. And weirdly, I think I've had friends who've been trying to make the jump from fiction to screenwriting. And weirdly, I think it was easier for me because, the kind of poetry I wrote, it wasn't like confessional, boo-hoo-hoo poetry. It was like pretentious, surrealist, imagistic poetry. And so I'm basically juxtaposing images to create emotions, which also could be a halfway decent definition of screenwriting. So there was something there. Like a lot of fiction writers, there's a lot of internal monologues and inner life that it's hard to translate onto a script. So that's part of it. I think there's, I think in images, I think in sounds, I had to learn structure. The other part of it is just like I got incredibly lucky that I broke in on Longmire. My mentor, showrunner, is a woman named Greer Shepherd, who's like the best human being on earth. And she knew that she was getting a green person in, and she, you know, they were kind of upfront, like, Tony, like, like, you're the last person we hired for the room. The two people that we wanted to hire before you weren't available anymore. So, like, you're a good writer, but but you're cheap, because I was a freelancer. I didn't even live in LA. And you come from this world, vaguely from the rural Western world. I grew up next to the Muckleshoot Indian Reservation, and Longmire took place next to a fictional Cheyenne reservation. So I was kind of like the go-to guy for that border space. And then, you write macho stuff with some lyricism. So it seems to fit. We'll teach you, you bring that, you bring your voice, you bring your background, and we'll help you on structure. And so they're very, I was a very good student of it. And early on, Greer's was like, Tony, I think you're going to end up having your own show. It's my job to mentor you and get you ready. So when you leave the show, you can do your own show, which I ended up being able to do. And so she would let me sit in on all the phone calls, conversations with the line producers. So I learned when you learn what's actually involved in making TV, you realize, like, that's part of what you're doing on the page. And and I just kind of, she patiently would walk me through structuring scenes. And then I wrote 2 episodes in season 1, and they brought me back for season 2. They let go of another writer and gave me his episode. So I wrote 4 in season 2. And at that point, by the end of season 2, I kind of felt like a professional screenwriter. So it took me a couple 2 seasons of them kind of, I brought voice, I brought interesting characters. I was bringing some to the table, but kind of after season 2, I didn't need as much hand holding on structure. So there was a little bit of an apprentice period involved. But I don't think my poetry background necessarily was a hindrance. And I also think I didn't have bad habits for them to break me out of. And I think they had some writers who had learned kind of some tricks of the trade that were actually working against them. And so I was a little bit of just, I don't know, just an eager sponge, and with, that they could kind of mold into hopefully a TV storytelling machine.
I mean, I don't know that we can end on a better note than that, Tony. That was a really great story about how you got from there to here. And I hope everyone enjoyed listening to us talk. I hope if you have not watched Pokerface after we've spoiled it for you, you will go watch it. But thank you, everyone, for coming. Tony, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm real honored to get to talk with you. Like I was saying beforehand, been reading and enjoying your writing and thoughts for a long time. So it's a pleasure, and thanks for everyone for joining us.
It's a pleasure as well. Take care. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.